An aircraft so revolutionary it sent a shiver through the very engineers who brought it to life. Rapid enough to leave every other rival in the dust. Stealthy enough to glide through enemy sensor webs like a digital ghost. The F-23 Black Widow II was destined to command the high heavens for half a century. Instead, it was relegated to the cold silence of a museum, buried by a bureaucratic decision that still haunts the halls of the Pentagon today. But here is the critical truth. This overlooked titan has just sent a signal that the Air Force can no longer ignore. What it reveals about the future of American air power is nothing short of shocking. The year was 1991. Two cutting-edge prototypes sat on the sun-baked tarmac at Edwards Air Force Base, poised to decide the destiny of global air dominance. One would evolve into the celebrated F-22 Raptor. The other would fade into the shadows of history. However, the jet that lost might actually have been the superior combatant all along. Today, as adversaries like China and Russia narrow the gap with their own low-observable platforms, that 30-year-old choice is returning to haunt the West. Welcome to Proud Jets, where we deconstruct the most gripping sagas in military flight. Today, we are investigating one of the most debated turning points in aviation history, and why the specter of the F-23 is causing such a stir in Washington right now. If you believe America should never settle for second best in the sky, type proud in the comments below. The Phantom Titan, a legacy interrupted. Let's journey back to the twilight of the 1980s. The Soviet Union was introducing formidable fighters like the MiG-29 and Su-27. These were not mere iterations of older designs. They were high-performance threats capable of ending American aerial supremacy. The Pentagon required a counter-response, not just a marginal improvement, but a generational leap. This gave birth to the Advanced Tactical Fighter (ATF) program. Two industrial coalitions rose to the challenge. Lockheed joined forces with Boeing and General Dynamics to produce the F-22. Meanwhile, Northrop partnered with McDonnell Douglas to engineer the F-23. Both teams invested nearly $700 million into their respective visions. These were not just test planes. They were multi-billion-dollar gambles on the future of high-tech warfare. The F-23 emerged from Northrop's design floor looking like a relic from a future century. Its profile was daring. Diamond-shaped main wings and massive V-shaped tail sections canted outward at sharp angles. The engine exhausts were shielded deep within the upper airframe to drastically minimize the infrared signature. Every contour and every junction was meticulously shaped for one objective: total radar invisibility. When it finally taxied out, veteran test pilots were speechless. This wasn't just another stealth jet. It felt extraterrestrial. The aircraft's entire doctrine focused on remaining unseen while operating at sustained supersonic velocities. It could supercruise at Mach 1.6 without the need for fuel-heavy afterburners, allowing it to fly further, faster, and more discreetly than anything else in existence. The performance metrics were staggering: a combat radius of 279 miles, nearly 500 miles more than its rival, and a radar cross-section smaller than a metal ball bearing. Its top speed hit Mach 2.2. Crucially, during the fly-off trials, the F-23 was the only platform to demonstrate sustained, true supercruise, as defined by the original requirements. The F-22 simply could not match that raw efficiency during the testing phase. Strategic superiority: why the better jet lost. Beyond raw speed and stealth, the F-23 was built to survive deep within hostile territory. Its massive internal fuel capacity meant it could strike deep into the heart of a contested theater and return without the vulnerability of aerial refueling. For the U.S. Navy, this was a potential revolution. Carriers could remain safely over the horizon while their strike groups hit targets far inland. On paper, the F-23 exceeded the Air Force's requirements in nearly every category. It was faster, more difficult to detect, and more fuel efficient. So how did the better plane lose? April 23, 1991, marked the day that changed history. Secretary of the Air Force Donald Rice announced the F-22 as the winner. Northrop's team was devastated. Analysts were baffled. The official narrative centered on maneuverability. The F-22 featured thrust vectoring nozzles, allowing it to perform gravity-defying maneuvers that looked spectacular at airshows. But here is the secret. The F-23 didn't need movable nozzles. Its massive control surfaces and aerodynamic lift allowed it to achieve nearly identical turn rates. Test pilot Paul Metz, who flew both, later admitted the F-23's agility was vastly underestimated. If performance wasn't the deal-breaker, what was? It came down to politics, corporate standing, and the quote-quote fighter mafia. Northrop was struggling with federal fraud charges and the ballooning costs of the B-2 bomber program. The Pentagon was worried about Northrop's ability to manage another massive contract. Conversely, Lockheed was in financial trouble and needed the win to stay in the fighter business. There was also a cultural clash. The Air Force leadership was dominated by pilots who valued the dogfight, the close-in visual range scrap. They loved the F-22's flashy acrobatics. The F-23 represented a silent assassin philosophy. Kill the enemy from 100 miles away before they even know you exist. To the old guard, that didn't feel like real flying. Lockheed sold a story. Northrop built an airplane. The haunting of the Pentagon. Today, the F-22 Raptor, while arguably the best air superiority fighter in service, faces a crisis. Production was halted at just 187 units due to post-Cold War budget cuts. We ended up with a silver bullet force, incredible technology, but far too few planes to sustain a major conflict. Meanwhile, the two F-23 prototypes sit in museums, beautiful, lethal, and effectively discarded. But the story is returning to the forefront because our adversaries didn't stop. China's J-20 and Russia's Su-57 are now operational realities. The Air Force is currently rushing to develop the next-generation air dominance (NGAD) fighter, and it is hitting the same walls: astronomical costs and political indecision. This is where the ghost of the F-23 delivers its warning. We chose the F-22 because of its dogfighting prowess, but in the modern era of long-range sensors and hypersonic missiles, the F-23's focus on extreme stealth and massive range is exactly what we need today. We are repeating the pattern of choosing short-term spectacle over long-term strategic depth. Current estimates for sixth-generation fighters suggest a price tag of $300 million per jet. At those prices, will we only build 20 or 30? Will we create another museum-grade fleet that is too expensive to actually risk in combat? The F-23 warns us that brilliance without commitment is meaningless. You can design the greatest fighter ever conceived, but if you cannot build enough of them, if you cannot deploy them where they are required, then you have simply wasted billions on a museum piece. The Resurrection, the Black Widow's Revenge. Something incredible happened in 2024. Northrop Grumman released concept art for the Navy's FA/AX fighter, and it looked strikingly familiar. It featured the same sleek, blended wing body and duckbill nose as the F-23. It proves that Northrop's vision from 1991 was actually 30 years ahead of its time. For sixth-generation requirements, extended range, low infrared signatures, and high-speed penetration, the F-23 design remains the gold standard. The engine intakes on this new concept were positioned on top of the airframe, a revolutionary change that drastically reduces infrared and radar signatures from below. This is critical for naval operations where enemy ships scan the skies. It represents the exact kind of stealth-focused philosophy the F-23 pioneered. Northrop isn't just paying homage. They are proving that their core concepts remain valid. Even the secret NGAD demonstrator is rumored to draw heavily from the lessons of the F-23. What makes this particularly interesting is Northrop's current reputation. In 1991, they were the risky choice. Today, they are delivering the B-21 Raider on time and on budget, while Lockheed's F-35 program is plagued by unprecedented delays and cost overruns. The tables have turned, and suddenly that F-23 sitting in the museum doesn't look like a failure. It looks like a massive missed opportunity. Lessons for the future of air power. What is the real message the F-23 is sending to the Air Force today? First, don't let politics override engineering. The best aircraft doesn't always win contracts, but in war, capability matters more than marketing. Second, range and stealth matter more than ever. The Pacific Theater is not a place for short-range dogfighters. It is a place for the sensor fusion and long-range strike capabilities that the F-23 championed. Third, build at scale or don't build at all. 186 Raptors cannot defend American interests globally. Fourth, speed matters in development. The F-23 went from concept to flight in 50 months. Today, programs take decades, allowing adversaries like China to outpace us through sheer bureaucratic speed. Fifth, maintain industrial competition. Choosing the F-22 to save Lockheed was a short-term fix that led to a near monopoly that drives up costs today. The F-23 represents a fork in the road. We chose one path and can never know what the other would have brought, but its legacy isn't about regret, it's about learning. Right now, the Air Force stands at another crossroad. Will they repeat the same mistakes, prioritizing showmanship over capability and cutting production due to costs? Or will they finally break the cycle? Our brave airmen and women deserve the absolute best tools, not just the best PowerPoint presentations. They deserve a defense establishment that builds what victory requires, not what committees approve. The F-23 proved America could design world-beating fighters, but it also revealed we'd lost the ability to make hard strategic choices and stick with them. That is the warning from a fighter that never fought a war, but might have changed how wars are fought. If we don't hear it this time, the consequences could be catastrophic. Conclusion: the ghost in the hangar. The F-23 Black Widow II sits silently in museums today, a monument to what might have been. But its shadow looms larger than ever over the future of American air dominance. The question isn't whether we made a mistake in 1991. The question is whether we'll learn from it in time to secure our future. If this deep dive into the best fighter we never built gave you a new perspective on military technology, hit that like button and subscribe to Proud Jets for more untold stories of aerial dominance. The fight for the sky never ends, and the legacy of the Widow is just beginning. What impressed you most about the F-23? Share your thoughts in the comments.